I want you to think about the last bag of chips you opened. Not soda, not candy, not anything with obvious added sugar sitting right there on the label. Just a plain, ordinary bag of chips, the kind sitting in almost every pantry in the country right now. Here's something that might genuinely surprise you. That golden, crispy, perfectly browned color on every single chip in that bag is not just flavor and texture. It's actually a visible sign of a chemical reaction happening inside the food itself, one that research has connected directly to the same collagen-affecting process we usually only talk about in the context of sugar. And this happens whether or not there's a single gram of added sugar anywhere near that bag. Stay with me, because I promise you, by the end of this video, this isn't going to feel scary. It's going to feel like one of those things where the science finally makes sense. And once it does, you'll know exactly what to do with it. That's genuinely the whole purpose of the next 25 minutes. My name is Dr. Elizabeth, and for the past 12 years, I've spent my career helping people understand their skin, not through fear and not through miracle promises, but through real, evidence-based education. I want to be completely honest with you before we go any further. I am not here to tell you that chips are poison, that you need to throw out your pantry, or that one snack is secretly destroying your skin. That kind of language shows up constantly online, and it's simply not how biology actually works. What I am going to do is walk you through a genuinely fascinating, well-documented mechanism, explain exactly why it happens, and then give you a clear, realistic way to work with it rather than against it. Before we go further, I want to build a little community around this channel because the comment section genuinely shapes what I explain next. So tell me, where are you watching from today? And be honest, are chips one of your regular snacks? I read every single comment, and it helps me figure out what to break down next. And if you find this kind of grounded, honest education useful, a quick like on this video genuinely helps it reach more people asking the exact same questions you are. Now let's actually get into the biology, because once you understand what's happening inside that bag of chips and inside your own skin, this entire topic stops being confusing and starts making complete sense. Before we talk about chips specifically, I want to make sure we're on the same page about collagen itself, because so much of the confusion around this topic comes from people using the word without really knowing what it means. Collagen is a protein, and it happens to be the most abundant protein in your entire body. Inside your skin specifically, collagen lives in the dermis, that thicker structural middle layer sitting just beneath the surface. Picture collagen as a kind of scaffolding, long, organized fibers woven together that give your skin its firmness, its structure, and its ability to bounce back after being stretched or pressed. Alongside collagen sits elastin, another structural protein that provides flexibility. Together, these two proteins are largely responsible for skin that looks plump, smooth, and resilient. Your body produces new collagen continuously throughout your life, though research consistently shows that production naturally slows as we get older. That natural, gradual slowdown is completely normal and expected. What we're talking about today is something different, a process that can affect the quality and function of the collagen you already have, regardless of your age. Here's where it gets genuinely interesting. When starchy foods, like potatoes, are cooked at high heat, especially through frying, a chemical reaction takes place called the Maillard reaction. This is the exact same reaction responsible for the browning on toast, the crust on bread, and yes, that perfect golden color on every chip in the bag. During this reaction, sugars naturally present in the potato react with proteins under high heat, and this process directly produces compounds called advanced glycation end products, commonly shortened to AGEs. Now, you may have actually heard of AGEs before in a slightly different context. Research on nutrition and aging has shown that your own body can produce these same compounds internally when excess sugar circulating in your bloodstream attaches to proteins like collagen, a process called glycation. That internal process is what gradually stiffens collagen fibers over time, making them less flexible and less able to support smooth, resilient skin. What's genuinely fascinating, and what almost nobody explains clearly, is that you don't actually need excess sugar in your diet to introduce AGEs into your body. You can eat these compounds directly, already formed, simply by consuming foods cooked at high, dry heat, and fried, starchy snacks like chips happen to be one of the most concentrated dietary sources of them. So let's connect this directly to your skin. Research published in nutrition and dermatology journals has measured AGE levels in various commonly eaten foods, and fried, starchy, high-heat processed snacks consistently rank among the highest sources in the average diet, often significantly higher than the same food prepared by boiling, steaming, or baking at lower temperatures. When you consume foods high in these preformed AGEs regularly, your body absorbs a portion of them, and research suggests they contribute to your body's overall AGE burden, the same underlying pool of compounds we discussed with internally produced glycation from sugar. Here's the mechanism connecting all of this to collagen specifically. AGEs have a tendency to bind to collagen fibers and effectively create unwanted cross-links between them. Picture your collagen scaffolding as a network of springs designed to flex, stretch, and bounce back. When AGEs cross-link those springs together, they become stiffer, less springy, and less able to do their job effectively. Over time, and I want to emphasize that word, over time this contributes to skin that may show reduced elasticity and firmness. This is not something that happens from one bag of chips. This is a cumulative process research associates with sustained, regular, high intake over years, not an occasional snack enjoyed here and there. I find it helpful to think about this the way a mechanic might describe metal fatigue in a bridge. A single car driving across a bridge doesn't damage its structure in any meaningful way. But research on materials science shows that repeated stress, applied consistently over years and years, gradually changes the flexibility and integrity of that structure, even though no single event caused it. Your collagen network responds to AGE cross-linking in a broadly similar way. It's not one bag of chips creating a single dramatic event inside your body. It's the slow, cumulative pattern of thousands of small exposures over years that research associates with measurable changes, and understanding that distinction is genuinely important because it changes the entire conversation from panic to simple, practical awareness. There's a second mechanism worth understanding, separate from AGEs entirely, and it involves the oil itself. When oils are heated to high temperatures repeatedly, particularly in commercial frying processes where the same oil is often reused multiple times, they undergo oxidation. This process generates compounds called free radicals, unstable molecules that can cause what's known as oxidative stress when they interact with cells throughout your body. Your skin happens to be particularly vulnerable to oxidative stress because it's a highly metabolically active organ with a dense blood supply, meaning whatever circulates through your bloodstream reaches it fairly directly. Research suggests that oxidative stress can damage collagen fibers through a separate pathway from AGE cross-linking, essentially breaking down existing structural proteins faster than your body can naturally replace them. Your body does have its own defense system against this, primarily through antioxidants, compounds that neutralize free radicals before they can cause this kind of cellular damage. But when oxidative stress consistently outpaces your body's antioxidant defenses over a sustained period, that imbalance is what research connects to accelerated changes in skin firmness and texture. It's worth understanding a little more about how reused frying oil specifically factors into this, since it's genuinely relevant to a lot of commercially prepared fried snacks, not just what you might cook at home. Research on repeated oil heating shows that each cycle of heating and cooling increases the concentration of oxidized compounds within that oil. Commercial food production, particularly for shelf-stable packaged snacks, has historically relied on extended frying processes to achieve consistent texture and shelf life. And the oils used in that process can undergo multiple heating cycles before the food ever reaches your pantry. This doesn't mean every bag of chips on every store shelf is loaded with dangerously oxidized oil. Food safety regulations do exist around oil quality in commercial production. But it does explain why researchers studying dietary oxidative load consistently include commercially fried packaged snacks as a meaningful contributor worth understanding, alongside homemade fried foods. I want to pause here and address something directly, because I know exactly how this can start to feel while you're listening. It can start to feel like every single food is secretly working against you. And that's not the message I want you walking away with today, because it simply isn't true, and it isn't how your body actually works. works. Your body is not fragile and it is not helpless against this process. You have genuinely robust, well-documented biological defense systems working continuously to manage exactly what we just discussed, both AGEs and oxidative stress. Your liver and kidneys work to process and clear a portion of ingested AGEs. Your body produces its own antioxidant enzymes, and you can meaningfully support that system through what else you eat alongside these foods, which we're about to cover in detail. This is not a story about a dangerous food lurking in your pantry. This is a story about an ordinary, everyday pattern that, when understood clearly, gives you genuine, practical tools to work with your body, rather than feeling like your skin is at the mercy of what's in your snack drawer. I think it's worth remembering that humans have been cooking starchy foods at high heat for thousands of years, roasting, frying, and browning food long before anyone understood the chemistry behind it. Your body's antioxidant and repair systems didn't develop in a vacuum. They evolved alongside a diet that has always included some amount of these compounds, from roasted vegetables to seared meats to browned bread crusts. What's changed in recent decades isn't the existence of these compounds. It's the overall volume and frequency at which many people now encounter them, largely through the convenience and availability of heavily processed, packaged snack foods eaten many times throughout the day rather than occasionally. That distinction, frequency, and overall dietary pattern, rather than the mere existence of AGEs in food, is really at the heart of what the research is describing. I want to speak directly now to anyone watching this who is over the age of 60, because a couple of pieces of this puzzle apply somewhat differently to you, and I think it's worth understanding why. First, remember that natural collagen production already slows gradually with age. This means the collagen you do have matters more, in a sense, because your body is producing less new material to offset any stiffening that occurs in existing fibers. Second, research on oxidative stress shows that the body's natural antioxidant defense systems can become somewhat less efficient over time as well, meaning that same free radical exposure may have a slightly more pronounced cumulative effect compared to earlier decades of life. None of this means damage is inevitable, or that anything has already gone wrong. It simply means the supportive habits we're about to walk through carry a bit more practical value the further along we are in life, which is exactly why I wanted to make sure you had this information clearly explained rather than left to vague, worrying internet claims. I think of a retired librarian I'll call Dorothy, a woman in her early 70s who mentioned during one of my community sessions that she'd been an avid chip lover her entire adult life, something of a nightly ritual with a book after dinner. She'd read a frightening, exaggerated headline online claiming fried snacks were destroying her skin from the inside out, and she genuinely panicked, throwing out every bag in her pantry that same evening. Once we walked through the actual research together, the real mechanism, the cumulative nature of it, and the genuinely supportive habits available to her, she told me it was such a relief to understand this wasn't an all-or-nothing situation. She didn't need to eliminate something she genuinely enjoyed. She needed a little more understanding and a few small, informed adjustments, which is exactly what we're going to cover next. Now let's talk about where people typically go wrong when they hear information like this, because I see the same patterns constantly, and clearing them up genuinely matters. This is easily the most common reaction, and it's simply not supported by the research. Dietary AGE intake and oxidative stress are dose-dependent and cumulative processes, meaning research associates meaningful effects with consistent, high long-term intake, not with occasional consumption. Many people experience real anxiety hearing information like this because they assume any exposure equals damage, when the actual science describes something much more forgiving and much more manageable than that. This genuinely surprises people. Research measuring AGE content across different cooking methods consistently shows meaningful differences based on temperature, cooking time, and method. Baked or air-fried versions of the same starchy snack generally show measurably lower AGE formation compared to deep-fried versions cooked at higher temperatures for longer periods. This doesn't mean one version is a health food and the other is dangerous, but it does mean the preparation method genuinely matters. And it's a variable that's often entirely within your control if you're preparing snacks at home. This is one of the most practically useful pieces of research on this topic, and almost nobody talks about it. Studies on antioxidant intake show that consuming foods rich in vitamin C, vitamin E, and various plant compounds called polyphenols, alongside or shortly after eating high AGE or oxidized fat foods, can help support your body's ability to neutralize some of that oxidative load. This means pairing, rather than avoiding entirely, is often a genuinely practical, evidence-supported strategy. A handful of chips alongside a colorful vegetable-based dip, or followed later by a piece of fruit, isn't just a nice habit, it's functionally supporting your body's own defense systems. I think about a retired postal worker I'll call Frank, a gentleman in his 60s who mentioned to me that his evening ritual for years had been a bowl of chips in front of the television. Nothing alongside it, just the chips on their own. Once he learned about this pairing concept, he made one small adjustment, keeping a small bowl of cherry tomatoes or a handful of berries next to the chip bowl most evenings. He told me it wasn't a sacrifice at all. If anything, he genuinely enjoyed having both together, and he felt considerably better knowing he was giving his body some genuinely useful support, alongside a habit he had no intention of giving up entirely. That's exactly the kind of small, sustainable adjustment I want you to take away from this video. Not restriction, just thoughtful addition. This one is unrelated to collagen specifically, but genuinely relevant to how your skin looks day to day. Most commercial chips are quite high in sodium, and research on sodium intake shows it can contribute to temporary water retention throughout the body, including in the skin. This isn't a collagen issue, it's a hydration and fluid balance issue, but it's worth understanding as a completely separate mechanism from everything else we've discussed today, one that affects how your skin looks and feels in the short term, rather than its long-term structural firmness. Let's turn all of this into something practical. I want to be very clear that none of this requires eliminating chips from your life entirely. This is about informed, sustainable habits, not restriction. Step 1, pay attention to frequency rather than presence. Research associates meaningful effects with sustained, regular, high intake over years, not with occasional enjoyment. If chips are an everyday, multiple times a day habit, shifting toward a few times a week is a genuinely meaningful adjustment. If they're already an occasional treat, the research we discussed today simply isn't describing a significant concern for you. Step 2, when you're preparing snacks at home, consider baking or air frying starchy foods, rather than deep frying them at high temperatures. This single adjustment measurably reduces AGE formation during the cooking process itself, based on the research we discussed. Step 3, practice intentional pairing. Keep colorful, antioxidant-rich foods on hand alongside your snacking habits: berries, citrus, leafy greens, bell peppers, foods naturally rich in vitamin C and polyphenols. This isn't about guilt or canceling out a snack. It's about genuinely supporting your body's own defense systems, in a way research shows to be effective. Step 4. Stay mindful of overall sodium intake across your day, not just from chips specifically, since sodium's effect on skin appearance is cumulative across everything you eat, not isolated to any single food. Step 5. Support your skin barrier from the outside as well, using a moisturizer containing antioxidant ingredients like vitamin C or vitamin E, and maintaining consistent sun protection, since ultraviolet exposure is one of the most significant independent contributors to oxidative stress and collagen breakdown that research has identified, often outweighing dietary factors considerably. Step 6. Consider your overall dietary pattern rather than fixating on any single food in isolation. Research on nutrition and skin aging consistently shows that the broader context of your diet, how much fruit and vegetable variety you're getting, how much fiber, how many minimally processed whole foods, matters at least as much as any single snack choice. Someone who eats chips a few times a week but otherwise maintains a varied, colorful, whole food-based diet is in a genuinely different position than someone whose overall diet consists mostly of highly processed, high-heat cooked foods with little antioxidant variety. This is why I want to steer you away from fixating on chips specifically and toward thinking about your overall pattern of eating, since that broader pattern is what the research actually tends to focus on. I want to close this section with something important. Of everything that affects your skin's collagen over a lifetime, sun exposure, genetics, and overall aging remain, by a considerable margin, the most significant factors that research consistently points to. Dietary AGEs and oxidative stress from foods like fried snacks represent one additional modifiable piece of a much larger picture, not the dominant factor, and certainly not something to build fear around. Understanding this piece simply gives you one more genuinely useful tool, alongside sun protection, gentle skincare, and healthy aging habits we've discussed in previous videos. To support your skin as thoroughly as possible, it's worth zooming out for a moment and thinking about relative impact. If you imagine everything that influences your skin's collagen over the decades as pieces of a pie chart, unprotected sun exposure alone research generally identifies as the single largest wedge, often described as responsible for the majority of visible skin aging changes over a lifetime. Genetics forms another substantial piece, one you have no control over at all. Diet, including the AGE and oxidative stress mechanisms we discussed today, occupies a real but comparatively smaller wedge of that same pie. I share this perspective not to minimize what we've covered. The mechanism is genuinely real and worth understanding, but to make sure you're allocating your attention and energy proportionally. A consistent sunscreen habit will very likely do more for your skin's long-term collagen health than any dietary adjustment we've discussed today, and I never want a video about snacking habits to overshadow that far more foundational piece of advice. Before we close, I want to offer a gentle, honest note, as I always do. Nothing about diet alone typically causes sudden or dramatic changes in skin firmness or texture. If you notice rapid, unexplained changes in your skin's appearance, elasticity, or texture, that's genuinely worth a conversation with a dermatologist, since a variety of factors, most of them unrelated to snacking habits, could be involved, and a professional is the right person to properly evaluate that. This isn't meant to worry you. It's simply the responsible thing to mention. So here's what I want you to walk away with today. That golden color on your favorite bag of chips isn't just flavor. It's a visible sign of a real chemical process that research connects to how your collagen behaves over time. But this isn't a story about fear, and it was never meant to be one. It's a story about understanding that this effect is cumulative, dose-dependent, and genuinely manageable through small, informed choices, cooking methods, thoughtful pairing, and consistent sun protection that work far better than restriction or panic ever could. You don't need to throw anything out of your pantry tonight. You simply now understand something that most people never get explained clearly, and that understanding alone is the entire point of this channel. If this video helped you see this topic a little differently, that genuinely is the whole purpose of what we do here. And I would love for you to consider subscribing so you don't miss the next one. Tell me in the comments what you'd like me to break down next. And as always, take good care of that remarkable, hardworking skin of yours. I'll see you in the next video.